Ishmael, the firstborn son of Abraham, is a figure often overshadowed by Isaac, yet his story is crucial to biblical history. Born from Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian maidservant, Ishmael's life was shaped by divine promises and human struggles. Though not the child of the covenant, he was still blessed by God. The story of Ishmael begins with Sarah's impatience. Since she was unable to bear children, she suggested that Abraham have a son through her maidservant, Hagar. In those times, this was a common practice, but it led to jealousy, conflict, and divine intervention. When Hagar became pregnant, she began to despise Sarah, and Sarah in turn mistreated her, leading to Hagar's escape into the wilderness. There, an angel of the Lord appeared to her, instructing her to return and submit to Sarah. This was the first recorded angelic appearance in the Bible. The angel gave Hagar a powerful prophecy about her son, saying, "You shall call his name Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your affliction." Genesis 16:11. Ishmael's name means God hears, signifying that God was aware of Hagar's suffering and had a plan for her child. Ishmael was born when Abraham was 86 years old, and for 13 years he was his only son. Abraham loved him deeply, believing that Ishmael would be his heir. However, when Abraham was 99 years old, God appeared to him again and reaffirmed his covenant, not through Ishmael, but through a promised son, Isaac. Abraham, confused and heartbroken, pleaded with God, saying, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." Genesis 17:18. But God made it clear the covenant would come through Isaac, yet Ishmael would still be blessed and become a great nation. A year later, Sarah miraculously gave birth to Isaac, and tensions grew between the two brothers. Ishmael, now a teenager, was seen mocking Isaac during a celebration. Sarah, fearing that Ishmael might threaten Isaac's inheritance, demanded that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away. Abraham was deeply distressed, but God reassured him, "Do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. But I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." Genesis 21:12-13. With a heavy heart, Abraham gave Hagar and Ishmael some bread and a skin of water, sending them into the wilderness of Beersheba. When their water ran out, Hagar, believing her son would die, placed him under a bush and wept at a distance. At that moment, God heard the cries of Ishmael. An angel called out to Hagar, saying, "Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him with your hand, for I will make him a great nation." Genesis 21:17-18. Suddenly, a well of water appeared, saving their lives. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness of Paran, becoming an expert archer. Hagar later found him an Egyptian wife, and he would go on to father 12 princes, fulfilling God's promise of making him a great nation. Though Ishmael's story fades from the biblical narrative, his legacy remains significant. He became the ancestor of many Arab tribes, and in Islamic tradition, he is considered a prophet and the forefather of the Prophet Muhammad. Despite being cast away, God never abandoned Ishmael. His survival and prosperity were signs that God's blessings were not limited to the chosen covenant line. He was a man of destiny, fulfilling a role in both biblical and world history. The last time Ishmael is mentioned in Genesis is at Abraham's burial. He and Isaac, despite their separation, came together to bury their father. This moment of unity suggests that their bond as brothers was never completely broken. Ishmael lived 137 years, and his descendants settled from Havilah to Shur, near Egypt. Genesis 25:17-18. The Bible says they lived in hostility toward their relatives, a fulfillment of the prophecy that Ishmael would be a wild man. Genesis 16:12. Ishmael's story carries important lessons about faith, destiny, and God's sovereignty. Though he was not the child of the covenant, he was still blessed by God, proving that divine mercy extends beyond human expectations. His life also teaches us about rejection and redemption. Though cast out, he still thrived. His story is one of resilience, showing that even when the world rejects us, God sees, hears, and has a plan for our future. Many scholars believe Ishmael's descendants played a crucial role in Middle Eastern history. His lineage became strong and independent, shaping the future of many nations. His influence extends far beyond biblical times. Ishmael's story is often compared to other biblical figures who faced rejection, like Joseph, Moses, and even Jesus. Though their paths were difficult, God used their struggles to fulfill greater purposes. Today, Ishmael remains a symbol of endurance. His journey from exile to prosperity mirrors the struggles of many throughout history. God's promises to him were fulfilled, proving that no one is forgotten in God's plan. The tension between Ishmael and Isaac's descendants still echoes today in the conflict between Arabs and Jews. Many see this as a continuation of the ancient division between the two brothers, though the Bible's ultimate message is one of reconciliation. In Islamic tradition, Ishmael is considered a key figure in the story of Mecca. Many believe he helped build the Kaaba with Abraham, marking the beginning of Islam's holiest site. While Christians often focus on Isaac, it is important to recognize that Ishmael was also chosen for a great destiny. His story teaches that God's love is not limited to one group of people. Ishmael's name, meaning God hears, and is a powerful reminder that God listens to the cries of the outcast. No matter how forgotten or abandoned one may feel, God is always near. The story of Ishmael challenges us to rethink how we view blessing and rejection. Even when life does not go as planned, God still has a purpose for each of us, just as he did for Ishmael. Ishmael's descendants, the Ishmaelites, played a significant role in biblical history. They were traders, warriors, and rulers, shaping the ancient world in many ways. Some believe Ishmael's story foreshadows the inclusion of the Gentiles in God's greater plan. Just as Ishmael was blessed despite being outside the covenant, salvation was later extended beyond Israel. The lessons from Ishmael's life are clear. God does not forget his promises, even to those who seem rejected by the world. His story is a testament to divine faithfulness and mercy. While Ishmael's journey was filled with trials, he emerged as a leader, a survivor, and a father of nations. His story proves that no one is truly forgotten by God. Ishmael, the so-called forgotten son of Abraham, was actually never forgotten by God. His story, though often overlooked, remains a powerful testimony of divine blessing, endurance, and legacy. Ishmael's journey teaches that sometimes God's plans are different from human expectations. Though Abraham initially saw him as his heir, God had a greater purpose for him, one that extended beyond the covenant of Isaac. Even though Ishmael was sent away from Abraham's household, he was never abandoned by God. His survival in the wilderness, his growth into a great nation, and his impact on history show that God was always guiding his steps. The struggles between Ishmael and Isaac remind us of the complexity of family relationships. Jealousy, rejection, and competition shaped their early years. Yet in the end, they came together at Abraham's burial, showing that reconciliation is always possible. Throughout history, Ishmael's name has been associated with the nomadic tribes of the Middle East, known for their independence and strength. His descendants, the Ishmaelites, were known for their trade, warfare, and resilience, leaving a lasting impact on history. Many biblical scholars point out that Ishmael's story symbolizes God's care for the outcasts. When Hagar and Ishmael were left in the wilderness, God personally intervened, proving that he is a God of mercy and provision. The Bible describes Ishmael as a wild man, Genesis 16:12, but this should not be seen as a curse. Instead, it highlights his fierce independence, his strength, and his ability to survive and thrive despite hardships. The connection between Ishmael and the Arab nations is significant. While Isaac's descendants formed Israel, Ishmael's lineage gave rise to many tribes that shaped the Middle Eastern world, showing how both sons of Abraham influenced history. Ishmael's story also shows how human impatience can complicate God's plans. Sarah and Abraham's decision to have a child through Hagar was based on their lack of faith in God's timing, yet God still worked through the situation to fulfill his greater purpose. Even though Ishmael's descendants are often portrayed as rivals to Israel, the biblical message is not one of eternal division. Instead, his story invites us to see God's greater plan of unity and redemption for all nations. The story of Ishmael is not just about one man, it is about God's faithfulness, his provision for those cast aside, and his ability to turn rejection into blessing. Though called the forgotten son, Ishmael's legacy was never forgotten by God.